Qatar still in the race to take over Manchester United? Well, according to some journalists, apparently there is still time to renegotiate after reports have come out that there is no guarantee a vote on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposed investment will take place, and a potential announcement is considered several weeks away. So will the Glazers get cold feet? Is this deal as nailed on as what a lot of people have been saying? You're forgetting the journalists that were reporting, it could be as early as Thursday. People from the Telegraph, Ben Jacobs, all these kind of guys that were saying, he could have control by the end of this week. The same journalists who were saying now it's not necessarily done. So there's a bit of confusion amongst the fan base at the moment. But I think you have to think these kind of opportunities now, especially if you're Sheikh Jassim sat there who claims to be a Manchester United fan. These opportunities only come around every 10, 20 years. Owning a rare jewel like Manchester United is a huge feather in the cap for whatever businessman you are. You think about our brand, our global reputation, we are absolutely everywhere. So will he reconsider? Will they find middle ground on this deal to see whatever it is that's on the table? I know the very last bid that Sheikh Jassim put in was for 100% of the club. I know it was debt-free, which obviously the Glazers don't give a shit about. And I know it was double the market value than what it was up for, or at least almost double. So regardless, whatever the situation is, if this deal with Sir Jim Ratcliffe is getting a little bit sticky or there's a few things they need to iron out, it gives food for thought. And could this, Qatari flame be reignited, if you will? What do you guys think? On today's show, I'm going to tell you why I still think this isn't over for Qatar just yet. So like I said, more and more reports and rumours coming out over the past couple of days suggesting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe isn't quite there just yet in regards to taking sporting control and 25%. You had the Telegraph reporting yesterday, very credible outlet, and some people in the market remain sceptical that Sheikh Jassim has completely lost interest in the club. And I don't know about everybody else, but I feel like there's a poker game ongoing here. I feel like both sides, especially Qatar and the Glazers, are still bluffing. As if to say, no, I'm definitely walking away. We're definitely not going to sell to you. I still feel like there's something in the air. And I don't know if it's just me. People might say, oh, you're reading into it too much. You're a fucking idiot or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. I just have a gut feeling this isn't completely over, and this is why I'm doing this video today. The reason is, if you just reflect over the whole takeover and the twist and turns that we've had and the amount of situations where we've been so positive it's going to be this guy, no, it's going to be this guy, and we're tearing each other apart in the fan base. Just look at the 11-month period that we've just been through, right, and how long it's been ongoing for. I mean, it wasn't too long ago when David Hellier, I believe it's David Hellier from Bloomberg, reporting that Ratcliffe's bid was completely dead in the water and Qatar was certain to be favourites. And that's what Qatar believed. Obviously, it's not out of the absolute realms of possibility that Sheikh Jassim spots an opening or a slight bit of doubt in this bid and goes for the jugular. If you think about the early complications in this deal, the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had to kind of pivot 3 or 4 times just to get his foot in the door and reduce his offer because of, you had certain shareholders within Manchester United which brought its own legal issues. And then still at this present moment, a lot of people don't know the finer details and the logistics of this deal. So Jim Ratcliffe wants clauses that allow for a full takeover. These are important things that must be in writing to hold any weight. So would you be gobsmacked if a report came out that there had been a breakdown in talks and the deal is still open and is a load of drama around the deal? Because it happens every single month with this club. Like I said, I still think it's likely that Ratcliffe manages to sign the dotted line and convince the Glazers, because his offer is obviously over a longer period of time and is worth more than Qatar's, in the long stead. He's basically getting the club on Klarna, is what it seems like. Plus, Joel and Avram will make even more money from it, and that is the only language the Glazers talk. So when you're putting that towards them, they're obviously going to accept it, and that's the whole reason why we've been in this situation for such a long time. They want as much as they possibly can for selling the club, and Ratcliffe is offering that. So be it, 25%, whatever the structure is going to be. Now, we, of course, have the flip side of this, which a lot of people are kind of expecting. If this does happen and Sir Jim Ratcliffe does take over the club, will Sheikh Jassim see this as an opportunity to show the Glazers what kind of power he has and go buy another Premier League club like a Tottenham Hotspur to make life even more difficult for the Glazers and push up that competitive edge within the league? There's been reports saying that he's a United fan and that was his dream and he's in love with the club, so he doesn't want to buy any others. But, a lot of things can happen in a year, 2 years. Time can change a lot. There's this kind of ongoing dispute that you don't need super wealth to compete with the big boys, because Liverpool have boxed clever and won Champions League and Premier Leagues, etc. But when you look at sustained success, it's Manchester City, and that's hard to argue with. I think they've won 5 out of the last 7 Premier League titles. They've just won a treble. They've won a lot of trophies, and that is because of significant wealth. I'm not saying you can't do it without it, but obviously super wealth helps, right? And if you put that behind a machine like Manchester United, you can only imagine the outcome. Unfortunately for football, that seems to be the way it's going at the moment. If you look at the Newcastle takeover, everything that's going on in Saudi Arabia, the amount of money that's being pumped into football is unbelievable. And again, that pushes the competitive edge and makes it harder to compete financially. The question mark with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid has always been, what happens with the lingering debt? Is he borrowing to pay it off? And ultimately, will he be paying it back with the club? Because then there still remains a dark cloud, albeit a cloud that's somewhere else, if that makes sense. What's happening with the stadium? What's happening? Will we still have FFP restrictions when we go into the transfer market? Who gets the final say on decisions? Because if Sir Jim gets 25% sporting control, then what about the decisions in general? Is Joel Glazer still in charge? In which case, the next 3-4 years are going to be exactly the same and shitty. It's all good getting this network and getting these people and elite professionals in, but at the end of the day, if Joel Glazer's signing that dotted line, things stay the same, right? That's at least how I see it in my mind, and there's many, many more questions to be asked. Then there's still a possibility they might pull the plug on the whole situation. We know how stubborn they can be, just looking at this whole takeover saga and how long they dragged it on for, not to mention they've never put a penny into the club when it's drowning. They tried to take us into a Super League as well, so for all these experts who are saying they have to sell, no, they don't. They don't legally have to do anything. They could sit on this for another year if they want, because they're spineless cunts, and we know they could do that without giving a shit. Of course, there'll be mass protest and there'll be anger within the fan base, but they've ignored that before, so what's any different now? They'll probably just do the same again. Just leaving it to others to deal with, like Richard Arnold and all these kind of guys at board level, whilst they sit in America just letting the club burn. Obviously, this is the least likely of options to happen. We don't expect this to happen, but you can't completely rule it out. Look at the 20 years they've been in charge. Like, you cannot rule this out at the moment. So I'm extremely cautious about what's on the table at the moment, even though a lot of people are saying it's already done and stranger things have happened in football. Ultimately, the number one priority from the Glazer family in this deal has always been to get the asking price that they want, or the most amount of money for Manchester United as possible. It was the Rain Group's job to get that price and get it by any means necessary. So if the Rain Group go back to the Glazers now and say, no, Sheikh Jassim's actually not coming back in, or actually there's a bit of difficulty with Ratcliffe's bid, what happens then? Now, look, before we get into this bit, I'm just going to kind of preempt it with, I'm not into politics. I don't follow it a lot. I'm not completely clued up on it. I've done a bit of research and I've had a look into certain things. And I think one thing that we cannot ignore is this ongoing war between Israel and Palestine. I mean, literally, as I speak right now, you have Muslims killing Jews, Jews killing Muslims, hospitals being bombed. Like, there's a war going on right now between Israel and Palestine. It's as simple as that. There's a whole craziness going on. And it begs the questions, with the Glazers being a Jewish family, and obviously Sheikh Jassim, a Muslim whose family are a part of the royalty in an Arab state, has this caused any friction between the families? Because they're not at war with themselves. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, of course, the Glazers have their beliefs, the Jewish, and the Qataris have their beliefs as well. Strong beliefs. Ultimately, it's the political ramifications of a Jewish family selling to an Arab state. And I was reading up on this before, like I said, apparently the leaders of Hamas, who are an Islamic militant group, live in a luxury 5-star accommodation based in Doha, which is the capital of Qatar. The Glazer family have history of making donations to Donald Trump's political campaigns on numerous occasions. Not to mention the Israelis are armed and funded by the Americans, and according to the reports, Israeli government have pleaded with the Glazers not to sell to an Arab state. Our own UK government have already shown the support for Israel, so how would they view a state ownership who back the Palestinians in that regard, owning the biggest club in England with the brand and the global recognition that we have? What implications does this have long term? You know, if Qatar were to take over, another country start getting involved in this war, and this war drags on, what happens then? I suppose what I'm saying is there's a risk of element involved. You look what happened with Chelsea. Roman Abramovich had his ties to Russia. As soon as that came off, he was gone. Had to sell the club instantly. Is that not a risk for the club as well, if we were to be state-owned? Look, whatever kind of angle, take you have on this, whatever your preference is, everybody's so divided on the situation. But regardless whoever was to win, there are still some very, very serious questions on both sides of the coin, whether that's long-term future, where the money's coming from, political conflict, or just uncertainty within the fan base. But yet again, whichever perspective you look at, who are the ones who are suffering? Who are the ones who are getting the brunt of this, or who are the ones who are getting burnt? It's the fans. We get left in the dark constantly, and we have to pick up the pieces, and the fan base gets divided because we're all arguing amongst ourselves. So who's the best for the club? Who the next guy should be? Who the manager should be? What players should be? And I genuinely see this opportunity to sell the club still open at the moment. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe is likely to take over, but it's not concrete, it's not definite, and it's not signed just yet, so there's always an opening and room for movement to be made. So let me know how you see the takeover situation going. It's obviously been such a hot topic for so long now. A lot of people just want it to end, but it is interesting to see, you know, it seems like the final chapter now, or it feels like that. I mean, maybe there's more, but it does feel like we're getting near the end. I just want to say a big thank you for everyone for watching as well. Please do leave a like on the video and share it if you enjoyed this one. And if you don't agree with any of the points that I've made, or you've got some personal opinions that you want to share, leave them in the chat, man.